So starting with the first belief that we all tend to have. It's not me, it's them. Just imagine these scenarios. Now, whenever these kind of misfortunes hit us, what is your first thought? Do you immediately look into who or what is to be blamed? Or do you really look into that, okay, was I accountable for these situations? Well, I think there is a spectrum. There are some of us who are on the extreme end of the spectrum who can really blame anything and everything. So for example, if I left the stove on, I might even blame my partner because he's not helping around the house too much and I had to multitask. I left out the door and I forgot my wallet. Well, it was because of this friend who called just this last minute, and because of that call, I just forgot to take my wallet. While climbing up the stairs, well, no, I wasn't clumsy. It was the marble floor. Like, what's wrong with people? Why do they keep marble flooring? Well, we are all dealt with those people, right, who tend to blame just anything and everything. And when they can't find anything to blame, they can even blame the weather. Well, there are also people on the other side of the spectrum who literally blame themselves for everything that happens around, even if they had no influence or no responsibility towards that happening. And the truth be told, as a therapist, if we look into both of these extremes, they're both really counterproductive to where we are. Because when we are in the blame mindset, when we are playing that blame game, we are constantly looking at blaming other people. We're constantly looking at life happening to us and we not really making our life happen. And hence, we can really be in that passive victim state. So we stop taking agency. Anything that happens, we put it on somebody or someone else. And that really prevents us from looking into our own mistakes and hence growing from it. Similarly, when we are on the other spectrum, when we are just holding ourselves responsible for everything, when we're taking everything personally, we can really get caught up in that cycle and it can keep us stuck. It can waste a lot of our time and it can make us like beat ourselves up for something that's not even our fault. So the idea is to just check on ourselves every time something happens. I think we need to look at ourselves objectively, come out of the situation and see that, okay, what was my responsibility here? What was my accountability here? And when we use that approach, very often than not, we are going to really move forward rather than feeling stuck. I think I was also in that blame mentality a lot of times, a lot of different phases of my life. One such time was when I ended up taking a course that I did not want, and I very nicely put the blame on my family and my parents. I thought they influenced me to take up this course. And clearly, I was being this passive victim. I stopped going to college. I was just in this really low state where I thought my life is over and nothing is going to come out of my career. But soon enough, I did come out of that mindset, and that's when I started taking part in different activities in college. I started volunteering with different organizations, and that's what led me to really understand what I wanted to do, which is being with people, which is psychology. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the reason why I'm here today as a psychologist. The second mindset, I don't have time. This is the most common excuse that we have in the book. It's also the oldest excuse that we all have. Whenever there is something that we ought to do and we couldn't do, I think we just use that excuse, and so much so that we even believe that excuse, that it's true that I don't have time. And the funny part is that if we actually look at it objectively, our time is very much in our control. We choose how we want to spend our time, isn't it? Yes, of course, there are certain non-negotiables. We have certain responsibilities. We could have children. We could have parents we have to take care of. We could have our job who we are responsible towards. But if we hold on to this mindset that I don't have time, we can literally be stuck in that mindset for years. I remember, right now, yes, I'm a psychologist, I'm an entrepreneur, I am also a content creator. My startup Over a Cup of Tea is a completely bootstrapped one. So I'm also the HR manager, I'm also the marketing manager or the business development manager. So I'm also a mom to a 4-year-old and a homemaker. So there are a lot of hats that I'm wearing. So when I say this now that I don't have time, it can feel very valid in my head. But the truth be told, 5 years ago, I was not a mother. I did not have a child. I did not have too many responsibilities at Over a Cup of Tea. I was not a content creator. Even then, I told myself the same story, that I don't have time. So the interesting facts here is that the brain doesn't have a single clock that measures time. Yeah, that is why 5 minutes of staring at the wall can feel much longer than 5 minutes of scrolling through social media. Well, sociologist Nathan Palmer also confirmed the same, that time is actually a social construct. Ever thought of that? Well, it really means that time doesn't really exist. It's just an idea or a concept we believe as a society, and we all live by its rule. Interesting, isn't it? Because time seems to fly when we're doing something enjoyable, but crawls slowly when you're stuck in a boring situation. So what does it really mean when we say, I don't have time? So every time I think we tell ourselves that I don't have time, maybe we can check that what am I really meaning, and then probably take up the next approach. So here I've jotted down certain things that, okay, how can you manage your time better? So if you know that you want to make time for certain things, but you feel like you don't, I think we all know that maybe we can prioritize our time better. This is like a no-brainer, of course. So there are things that are important to us. We can choose to sort of give them time versus other things which are not important to us. And compartmentalize, I think this is a skill that a lot of us don't really use it very often. We think that multitasking is the best way to go when we have too many things around us. But actually, neuroscientifically, our brain is not capable to do multiple things at one go. We can focus on only one thing at a time. It's not technically doing all things at one go. And when we do that, our attention span markedly reduces, our productivity markedly reduces. So when you have too many things to do, too many things that you have to take care of, it's important that you, I think, divide your day into different chunks. And I do that too. There is a time for my work, for therapy sessions. There is a time for managing the entrepreneur part of it. Over a cup of tea, there is a time to be with my family. And that really helps me feel very, very sorted in my head. Ask for help. I think this was said in the previous presentation as well, that yes, we don't often do that. I think it's so important to delegate and ask for help whenever we are like, I think, caught up with too many things in hand. I think ask for people who are also equally responsible for that instead of trying to do it all. Right? And commit to less. By that, I mean that saying no when you don't want to do something, we really have to come out of that people-pleasing attitude, because when we do that, when we commit to something that you don't have the bandwidth to do, you actually lose more credibility. So before really saying yes to something, I think this is something I tell to all people-pleaser, that take your time to really give an answer. Whenever somebody's asking you that, hey, can you do this for me? You don't have to respond immediately. You can choose to take your time to answer. You can tell them that, okay, let me get back to you. Let me check my schedule and get back to you. And when you try and delay that, maybe you can use your rationale. You can actually check your schedule and see whether that's something you'll be able to do or not. The very important a very important belief that we all have is that I can't. And this I can't can actually go into 3 different parts. Sometimes we believe I can't because I don't have the abilities. Sometimes we believe I can't because our situations are coming in the way. And sometimes we believe I can't because of our personality traits. We feel like we're just not made to do that particular career option or that particular skill. And let me try and debunk all of that. To start with the abilities, right? I think the one thought that comes in the way is that we tell ourselves that I'm just not made for it. Or we believe that, either we have the talent or we don't. We come from a very, very fixed mindset. We feel like we are who we are, and our basic nature never really changes. Now, here's the thing. Our brain is really intricate, and so much research and studies have happened that has brought in so much information about the brain, which is actually a lot of neurosciences, whatever they believed 10 years ago, has changed too. So for the longest time, I think scientists believe that our brain develops only to a certain number of age. And after that, it's stagnant. After that, no matter what we do, we can't really learn as much. Now that has been debunked by something known as neuroplasticity. So picture the brain as a power network full of connections in a very dynamic structure. So it has electrical pathways. So each time you think or feel or act, those pathways get lighted up. Now, as we become adults, those pathways are, usually well traveled, and, you have certain paths which are highlighted already. Now, neuroplasticity is that, every time you learn a new skill, every time you change that path of coming to your college, or instead of using my right hand for brushing, if I use my left hand next day, and we do that consistently over a period of time, a new pathway gets created. So what it basically means is that our brain rewires itself and adapts to that new pathway. And if you keep doing that over a number of times consistently, now that new pathway becomes the automatic pathway. What does that tell us? This means that if you have a bad habit that you would like to change, like smoking, eating fast food, having negative thoughts, procrastination, or if you have any new skill to learn, you can practice carving a new pathway in your brain by doing it consistently over a period of time. This essentially means that all of us have the ability to change and learn something new. Isn't that interesting? Coming to the second part, which is situation. And this is a tough one because, yes, we all have certain situations that we get stuck in. There are certain circumstances that we all come from that can be a hindrance. Sometimes we can come from, dysfunctional families. Sometimes there can be financial constraints, lack of opportunities, lack of privilege. That can really come as a hurdle. And that becomes a hard thing because that is real and that is valid. And I don't want to dismiss that and invalidate that. But if we're talking about resilience, I think resilience is that not letting the circumstances limit you, rather looking for possibilities within the circumstances. And there's a famous quote that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And that essentially means is that it's not really what happens to us, but how we make meaning of that situation that really makes or breaks us. But if you look at yourself as a survivor, as somebody who is the hero of that story, as somebody who's going to bring yourself up and going to go forward anyway and look for the best possibilities there, that way you can give a different meaning to that situation completely. I think I was somewhere here when I got married and I moved to Kolkata, and this was like 10 years ago. Mental health scene in the country, as you know, 10 years ago was very different than what it is post-COVID. People barely even know what a psychologist does. I remember when I was looking for my office and I was telling my broker what we do, he was like, okay, aap psychologist ho, but aap karte kya ho? So it was really hard for me to explain that because, that was the level of awareness that existed. Thanks to Dear Zindagi, it became easier because I was like, yahan jo Shah Rukh Khan karta hai, wahi main karti hu. And it became easier to explain what I do. But that's where I was back then, 10 years ago. People didn't know mental health. People didn't know that, yes, mental health exists or there are professionals out there who can help you with it. So, I started to look out for work opportunities in Kolkata, and I also saw that the mental health scene in Kolkata was also something that I could not resonate with. There were clinics, yes, but it was literally like clinics. So you go there and there is a person in a lab coat who sits you down and gives you like tons of assessment to do. So you're treated like a patient, and then you're asked about your personal lives. Now, is that a process? Is it going to be a smooth one? Of course not. In that kind of setting, how do you expect a person to really open up about their personal lives? And that's when I realized that my career is not going to go ahead from there. I started feeling very, very hopeless in this city, that I don't have a place to work at. This city is not really open to mental health. What do I do? I started to feel like, okay, maybe this is an end to my career. I started looking at other business opportunities. I even joined my husband's business for a while. And thankfully, I think that's when I started to look at possibilities that, okay, no, I'm not going to be just limited by the circumstances, by the city. The reason that the city doesn't have is all the more reason that I bring in something, because mental health issues do exist. It's just that there is no platform that is there that people can go to. And that's when the thought came that maybe I should start my own wellness center. And that's when I think the inception of Over a Cup of Tea happened. Moving on to the third part, which is personality. This is a biggie because I'm pretty sure that most of us think that our personality is set. There are certain traits that define us and that's who we are, right? Well, is your personality fixed? Let's try and understand that there is a book called Personality Isn't Permanent, and this person argues that some shifts naturally occur as we go about our lives, but we can also consciously alter our traits should we desire to do so. One enormous study on honesty in children. This is a very interesting study that was done. They put thousands of children in different settings where they had the opportunity to cheat. And it was interesting that the same child who actually cheated in the math class did not cheat in other classes. So there was inconsistency everywhere. It's so easy that we put people in boxes. We feel like, okay, this person cheated once and this person is going to be always a cheater. But that isn't the case. So when we look into personality, there is this famous experiment called the marshmallow test. I think we've all probably heard of that. But the problem is that we've all heard of the wrong version of marshmallow test. The popular marshmallow test has become popular for the wrong reasons. I think the test sort of says that if you delay gratification as a child, if you're able to delay gratification as a child, going forward, you'll become a lot more successful. I think that's the version we've all heard, right? But truth be told, the experiment actually gave a different result, because when he gave marshmallow to children and he told the children that, look, if you do not eat this marshmallow for the next 15 minutes, you will get double of these marshmallows. So obviously these children were like between 4 to 6 years. They could not wait and they ate up the marshmallows. But the next time when he did the experiment, if you just picture the marshmallow as a picture, just imagine that this marshmallow doesn't exist. It's not real. And the interesting part was the result was now different. So this test sort of tells us so many different things that, we are flexible. The moment we reframe something, the moment we reframe how we see a certain thing, the action around it changes, right? And it also says that our personality is not set in stone. We can change our traits anytime we want to. If we expose ourselves to certain things, we can move towards being that. The fourth one, which is, I am not as good as them. Well, isn't this so common? And in today's digital age, comparison is just inevitable. We open our phone for 5 minutes and we see our colleagues, our friends, posting, glamorous pictures of doing amazing, awesome things in their social media accounts. So naturally, it's like an everyday thing when we look at those pictures and we are like, okay, I'm probably not as good as them. We see their achievements and we are like, I have not achieved that. So how do we really challenge this particular belief? This is something which is inevitable. Even social comparison theory talks about that. Comparing ourselves in social situations, we'll always do as humans. Also, sometimes it can be upward comparison, sometimes it can be downward comparison where we compare someone doing worse than us, and sometimes it can be lateral comparisons. But no matter what comparisons we are doing, I think something that I notice is that we are usually comparing the outcome. We are comparing the other person's outcome to our outcome, and we are like, okay, this person is more and I'm less. And that is such a myopic way of looking at that particular person's achievement, because we've totally disregarded the journey. We've totally disregarded the process, that person's process, my journey, my hindrances or challenges that I have faced. We've completely disregarded all of that. So if we are comparing ourselves with another person, isn't it only fair that we also compare their journeys and our journeys together? Is that possible? I'm guessing not, because our experiences are so different and unique. What I have gone through will always be different than the other person. Where I have studied, what influences I have got, what kind of parenting I have had. We are just so different and unique in ourselves that it's just impossible to compare ourselves fairly with any other person. Hence, the only person who it's fair to compare with, I guess, is probably you yourself. The person you were yesterday with the person that you are today. And if you see yourself growing, well, you have your answer. And the last one, which is, I will be judged. And this happens all the time when we are scared to try something new, when we are scared to participate in something because we have this peer pressure. We are afraid what our friends are going to say or what our parents are going to think. We are afraid of criticism. We are afraid of people making fun of us. And this thought is the thought that has come in the way for so many people to not really do what they wanted to do for so much of a time. How do we overcome the judgment? Well, when I talk to my clients, a lot of my clients who have anxiety, especially social anxiety, this is a very common thing that they go through. But when we dig deep into that, when we try and understand where that judgment comes from, even people who have, let's say, body dysmorphia or body image issues, and they're constantly feeling like people are judging me. The thing is that if we just break that down, it boils down to their own judgment about themselves. So if you really ask yourself, when you feel like people are going to judge you, the question is that, are you judging yourself right now? Are you ashamed of that thing? Or are you feeling embarrassed about doing that certain thing? Chances are the answer is yes, because it's not really other people. It's our own judgments that come in our way. If I am self-assured about what I'm doing, and this I go back because even as personally, when I started out as a therapist, I remember that whenever my clients would give me feedback, or if they don't turn up for the second session, they don't book for a second session, I would beat myself up and I'm like, oh my God, maybe the therapy session hasn't gone well and I was a terrible therapist. I was judging myself through that. But as years passed by, I became more experienced and probably more reassured as a therapist. Now, when people don't turn up for a therapy session, yes, I do check that, okay, did everything go well in the last session or not? But I also take into account that could there be other reasons why they haven't turned up, right? So it is not always personal now. And that happened only when I became more confident in my own skin, or as a therapist in this case. So whenever you are, whenever you are at a place where you're very, very sensitive about being judged, I think check with yourself that if you are judging yourself, and if you are, there are certain ways that you can challenge that. One is the self-talk. Most of the time, whenever to check with how you talk to yourself is the times when you falter, when you make mistakes. So whenever you falter, what is the first thought that comes to your mind? That, oh, I'm such a failure. What's wrong with me? I'm so silly. I'm so stupid. If these are the thoughts that come into your mind, well, the way you talk to yourself is very, very critical, naturally. So the first step would be for you to change that self-talk, change it to something which is more compassionate. You can change that judgment with something like curiosity and compassion. You can ask yourself that, okay, why did this mistake happen? Was there other factors? What were the factors that made me do this? And that will lead you to a very solution-focused approach, because you will know what went wrong and you'll be able to fix that. And when you're more compassionate about it, that is when you're looking at the context that, okay, yeah, I was very, very sleep deprived when I gave that exam. I was also very, very less prepared. So yeah, maybe that is why the outcome is this. So how can I be, more active and maybe not sleep deprived the next time? I think that will give you answers to just prevent that from happening the next time, right? So on that note, I think I want to end my talk with this beautiful Nike ad, which I think there are certain statements that goes that if people think your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good, stay that way. Because what they fail to understand is that calling your dreams crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough. It's only crazy until you do it. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you dream big and imagine beyond your limits. Thank you so much.